So speaking of hijacking, the FCC, I want to go on to a new topic, which is net neutrality. That's been in the news a lot recently. The Trump appointee controlled now FCC voted to roll back essentially the internet takeover of the government takeover of the internet by the Obama FCC. But in the meantime, there are lots of battles that are going on. Now, Judicial Watch is no fan of government takeovers of anything. Now, net neutrality is kind of like a fake term. It's basically, do you want intense government regulation of the internet, or do you want moderate or light government regulation of the internet, and where the market really is the controller as to how the internet functions? Now, obviously, we don't like massive government control of the internet, let alone massive government control of anything. And as is typical with the left and its power grabs under President Obama, there's always a lawlessness about it. Now, Judicial Watch has been looking at this issue for years. We filed, for instance, a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit back in May about communications between the White House and the FCC during the Obama years, because it looked like the FCC chairman under President Obama, thought that, well, to the degree we're going to regulate the internet, we just have to be very careful. Well, the Obama crowd and the hardcore left didn't like that. And so the White House said, we think differently. You need to really heavily regulate the internet. And the FCC's chairman's view on that changed on the dime after the White House intervention. Now, the FCC is supposedly an independent agency. So we're asking for documents about that. We're still waiting for documents about that. And we had already exposed, all the way back in, I think, 2010 and 2011, it led to congressional hearings, how net neutrality proponents from the left were working improperly with the FCC to push this net neutrality agenda. So we just aren't Johnny-come-latelys to this net neutrality debate. We've been watching it for as long as it's been going on. And not only that, but we filed a friend of the court brief, which is an amicus brief, with our friends at the Allied Educational Foundation, which is a group that is interested in constitutional governance like Judicial Watch is, asking the Supreme Court to take up a challenge, or supporting the Supreme Court, a move by someone challenging the FCC takeover of the internet, to take up a challenge to what went on during the Obama administration. And the question now before the Supreme Court is, okay, now the Obama administration tried to take over the internet. The Trump administration throttled that back. The question is, do we have laws that make sure the FCC just can't take over the internet based on administrative fiat? Do we want government agencies to take over the internet simply because there's a different president, or to be able to take over the internet with a change in presidents? Or if something like that's going to happen, however inimical it is to freedom, that it happened through the legislative process, the constitutional process we have for regulating significant swaths of the economy. Obamacare, for all of its terribleness, at least there was a law that was passed initially and signed by the president. And then the mess was created. But that isn't happening with net neutrality. The left wants to be able to take over the internet through administrative agencies just changing the rules. And obviously we don't believe that should be the case, and that the Supreme Court should take up this case and make it clear that if the FCC wants to come in and be the big brother on the internet, they have to have a lawful way for doing that, meaning authorized by Congress with a law signed by the President of the United States. So, this is an illustration that Judicial Watch is on, pretty much on everything. If there's a government corruption story of note that you've read about, you can bet that Judicial Watch is either monitoring it, we've done a Freedom of Information Act request on it, or maybe even taking court action on it. And I don't think you can say that about anything else that's going on here in Washington, or anyone else here in Washington.